From Pocketnow.com, this is Pocketnow Weekly.
Hello, and welcome to episode 015 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from Pocketnow.com where we discuss what's hot and what's cool in the world of mobile technology, smartphones, tablets, phablets, and everything in between. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, senior editor at Pocketnow. Brandon Miniman is busy with special Pocketnow operations today, so I'm joined by our managing editor, Anton D. Nagy. Welcome back to you, sir.
Good to be back. Good morning, everybody.
Good to have you back. And by our multimedia manager today, multimedia manager always, but joined today by Jaime Rivera. Welcome back to you, friend.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good to hear you.
Great to have you back as well. This has been an absolutely ridiculous period in news technology coverage. Tony and I were talking before the podcast started, and I was just remarking about how in a week so much could happen. And Tony's like, "Yeah, welcome to Q3." This is my first third quarter as a tech media person, so just getting bludgeoned by all this news is really
yet
awesome.
To experience Black Friday and Cyber Monday firsthand.
You are correct, but now I didn't even think about that, but now I'm full of fear. Thank you.
And just to give our listeners an idea, I actually logged between, I think it was like 50 or 60 hours between Sunday and Tuesday afternoon work.
Are you serious?
That much. That's how much work we've had in this past week with all these launches and stuff, man. It's just crazy. And the reviews are not, the phones, not all the phones that we're getting this holiday season are in for review yet. So it's crazy. It's
Plus, not to mention about your queue, which is going to become even bigger soon.
Don't remind me.
I want to throw this in at the top here. I actually I didn't write this down, but I'm glad I remembered. Listeners, if you are not aware, you should be, that every day still, right, Jaime? Is it still daily?
Oh, yeah. What, Pocketnow Daily?
The Pocketnow Daily comes out. It's a breakdown of news and happenings told from the perspective of Jaime Rivera. And if you're screaming at your screen right now because we don't have video on this podcast, first of all, go back and listen to the first episode, and we'll explain why. But you should definitely watch the Pocketnow Daily because there is video, and it's Jaime, and he's great on video. And I love watching the Daily. Tony and I watched the Daily every day in Berlin together. That was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thanks for
Jaime, at least you have two guys who at least watch your videos.
That's right.
Yeah, I know, man. I really appreciate that. You've got no idea what it's like to stand in front of the camera every day. Man, thank you very much.
Let's because there is so much news, we'll go to 2 hours if we don't get started soon. But before we jump into the news, Tony, I understand you have coffee poisoning.
Yes, indeed, I have, and this is because I'm such an idiot, a moron. I've been preparing for my iPad mini pre-order, which of course should have happened on October 26th. But I'm in Romania and I don't have an Apple store, so the closest Apple store to me is Apple Magyarország, Apple Hungary. I'm 10 hours before Cupertino time, and Hungary is 9 hours before Cupertino time, so I was happy to pre-order for the first time in history before Brandon does. So I'm staying up until 1 a.m., which is midnight in Hungary, and nothing happens. And then up until 2 and 3 and 4.
Were you refreshing the page and nothing's happening?
Yeah, every 10 seconds. Okay. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, I decided that there's no use for me to go to sleep anymore. And then Jaime wakes up, and I'm like, come on, what's going on? And he was like, of course, pre-orders start on October 26, but it's Apple Cupertino time, not local time. And I was like, okay.
So sorry for you.
Yeah, if I have a morning voice, I've been having that all day long. It's close to evening here. So, yeah, and that's coffee poisoning reason.
These are the perils of being on a planet that spins, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Tony. I've been there, man. I woke up once in an absolute panic in high school because I was told I could not be late one more time in high school, otherwise they wouldn't let me graduate. And I woke up around 8 one morning, and I was supposed to be at school 20 minutes beforehand, and it's about a 20-minute drive. So I get in my car, I'm flying down the road. And I just realized that something's really wrong. And I'm like in my pajama pants, and I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to get to school. It doesn't matter. But I'm like, whatever, no, it doesn't matter. I'm going to get to school, and I'm going to make up some story, and hopefully they'll let me graduate. And then I realized that there's nobody on the roads. And I'm like, why are there nobody on the roads? It's a busy... oh, it's totally Saturday morning. I don't have school today at all. So I completely understand, man. I've been there.
I'm actually happy that it's only happened to you once, because it happened to me twice already.
What, the pre-order thing, or being late to high school?
Seriously. In college, it happened to me twice.
Are you serious? Or, you showed up at class and it was a weekend?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The thing is, there were certain classes that worked on weekends, certain classes that worked on weekdays. That was just the way it was.
And you were preparing for.
Yeah. And I just totally screwed up the schedule from one semester to the other. Don't ask me how. There was a lot of beer involved in that.
Well, that's what college is for, right? We're going to talk about college later in the podcast too. I'm looking forward to that.
That's right.
Tony, you had before we jump into the special announcements. Brandon typically has a little thing to say at the top of the podcast, but today Tony does. And I don't know what that is.
It won't take long, just 5 minutes of my time. So.
Yeah, it sounds like your blood is boiling over there, and I don't know what this is about. This is going to be a genuine surprise. Should I get the censor button ready? Should I get the beep button? Are you going to get angry?
I'm going to try to beep the words out myself.
Okay.
But if I fail, feel free to beep.
I got it. Go ahead.
Got it. Okay.
So it won't take long, but I definitely feel obligated to do this. With the amount of exposure and attention I'm recently getting, I have to show some love back to all those whose purpose in life I'm yet to become aware of. So I blame them for the internet running out of IPs, not so slowly anymore, because I believe that's all their purpose in life is limited to take up an IP. Regardless, so here it goes. The other day, I think, or the day before that, I was writing a post, something, to give you an example, like the Samsung Galaxy Ace is awesome. Mm-hmm. And within 10 minutes of hitting the publish button, I get a comment. Yeah, but the iPhone 5 sucks. Android greater than iOS. I slowly breathe in and think to myself that, okay, another IP has been wasted, of course. There are people who haven't seen the internet in their lives, and this moron right here is wasting precious bandwidth. So I get back in the comments, and I'm like, hey, Baba, what the beep has the iPhone 5, iOS, or Apple, for that matter, got to do with this?
Amen.
And within a couple of minutes, there's a reply which turns into an endless thread of comments trying to convince me that I am an Apple fanboy, an iSheep, brainwashed, or paid by Apple, probably in this exact order.
Man, but I'm surprised that the comment did not include, and the Lumia 920 will be hot.
Yeah, that too.
Oh my God, the Lumia 920, the Lumia 920, the Lumia 9. I'm like, yeah, I want the damn phone too. Could somebody please beg Nokia to give me the phone? That's what I want right now. I mean, come on, Tony's right though. The core of the thing is that no matter what the piece you write is, you get a comment. Like there's always going to be some commenter, and usually I think I agree. Tony, are you saying this is happening more often now that they will comment on a device that wasn't even mentioned in the piece? Usually an Apple device, just so they can kind of crap all over it. Is that right?
Yeah, and I continue on, and I'm gonna say, you see, the problem with you idiot, is that you're nobody, because even though you're trying to be somebody so hard, you are not visible. Me and the rest of the guys on the team, we are visible. I mean, you know our names, you know our faces, our voices, our email addresses, our Twitters, everything.
Don't get us shot.
That's because we say something and we do it in a public manner. You, on the other hand, you stupid idiot, are hiding behind a username. Some of the times commenting as a guest and with a stupid avatar instead of your picture. So you say you don't care about the iPhone, iOS, or Apple, and yet you find the time to bash it. I'm not even going to talk about pieces which criticize the unicorn platform, that's how I'm calling it right now, or one of its OEMs, or about those pieces which are laudatory to any other platform or OEM whose device they probably don't have. The key takeaway here is that the amount of activism is unbelievable. I mean, it stinks from 2 miles away. It's odious. It is that kind of militancy and propaganda that not only speaks of you, idiot, and your only idiot brain cell, but it also gives you the perfect dictionary-grade definition of what the term fanboy is. And this is one category. The other category is the dumb and ignorant, who simply say that you're right, but the insert Android phone name here is better than the iPhone. Okay, I breathe again, hop in the comments and say, okay, you obviously have an argument for that. Let me know why. And he's
thank you for your feedback.
like, because it's an iPhone. It's simple, and the insert Android phone name here is better. Android is better than iOS. And I reply again, hoping he has an argument finally, and ask him, why is Android better than iOS? And he's like, because it is. iOS sucks.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what the end game to so many of these arguments is. It's because you're right. What did you say? You called it odious. It is. Yeah. It is a horribly irritating and frustrating and destructive environment that is fostered by these kind of attitudes that I've been seeing. Of course, apparently it was my turn to like write the unpopular pieces this week because it's like every other headline. I think
Jaime would disagree.
No. Oh, Jaime. Oh, yeah, you're getting just destroyed, right?
I'll disagree with you, but yeah. I'm gonna make a little point here, and I am just gonna leave this on the table. And the listeners can make their minds for whatever they feel about this. I have used Windows, Microsoft products forever. If anybody can tell me what the command attrib plus H plus R and a file extension means, then yes, you do know what DOS 4.2 means. If you can't answer that, then there's no reason for you to hear this. But the thing is, I have more Pocket PCs in my drawer than I have of any of the newer devices that have been launched in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. That's the type of Microsoft fanboy that I used to be, and I accept it. That was me. I would hate Palm devices back in the day. And if any of you remember when Microsoft launched Windows Phone 7, all of us were really excited with Windows Phone 7 and everything, but none of us have ever really used it back then. That was two years ago, right? Yeah. And I just completely started noticing this pattern in the comments that totally begun irritating us. And it was that we began having these really stupid batch of comments that were like, it's going to be great. And it was the same thread, the same line. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And you would see, like 40 or 50 comments of Windows Phone 7 that were like, it's going to be great. And I'm like, man, this sounds like a marketing firm that's being paid to comment in our systems and to stir the attention to Windows Phone 7. And then you would go to the non-Windows Phone 7, post, and they would just bash you. And this has been happening with the Lumia 920 for the past month.
It was happening with the Lumia 900 too.
I am just going crazy. Please launch the phone. I'm tired of these comments. Seriously, just launch the phone, please, because it's clear that there is some sort of manipulation.
And I saw one of those on my piece. There was a paragraph long thing with no line breaks in it. So I left a smart ass remark, and I was like, please use the enter key, and everybody hated that because they don't like it when I'm petty in the comments and whatever. Okay, fine. I get it, but I was like, this is a giant block of text the size of a continent. I'm not going to read it. And then I was like, who is this user? And I look at her other posts, and they're all the same exact thing. They're not verbatim, but they're all giant blocks of text defending anything and everything Windows Phone. But they don't seem to be more in depth than that. And then her two first posts ever were like spammy posts on like sex sites. And I'm like, who are these people who are commenting on our stuff?
Exactly. And so this is my point. Yesterday, I published my thoughts on the Microsoft Surface RT. And so I get this comment from this guy who, he's like, you haven't even touched the Surface RT and you're already commenting on it. And I'm like, you have a valid point. But the problem is, Joe Levi didn't touch the iPad mini, and he made his post on what an Android guy thinks of the iPad mini. And so has Adam Lane not touched the iPad mini, and he made his comment. And I'm like, this is actually a series. We're doing a series where I do my opinion on something that's opposing to what it's my daily driver. Mm-hmm. And so the guy just begins bashing me. And I'm like, wait a second. And I just began hitting his profile. And it turns out that this guy is a Microsoft MVP. And I'm like, no wonder.
Now we've come to the bottom of the issue.
Understand. And listeners, for the record, we have a Microsoft MVP or a past MVP on this podcast
we have
right now.
Two. On the podcast, but we have two on the team.
Okay, so Anton, could you please explain how the MVPs retain their title, please?
Well, back in the day when I was an MVP, because I didn't get the award for this year, Microsoft and the MVP team is taking a close look at your activities throughout the community, supporting the product, supporting users who have problems, and usually being a militant for the platform itself.
Oh, so it means that you have a certain interest in providing your positive feedback towards a product that nobody's ever used, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my point. This sort of manipulation, that sort of practice is something that I consider unethical. Because if a product was as good as these people say it is, why isn't it, aren't customers supposed to do that? Because, I do the same thing on Pocketnow Daily. I ask everybody on my question of the day yesterday, I asked everybody, what are you getting, the Windows RT tablet, the Surface RT, or the Windows 8 Pro? Everybody, I'm like 99% of the commenters on YouTube and on that post in Pocketnow responded the Windows 8 Pro, and that was my point.
It's just normal.
That was my point in the editorial. The point is the Windows RT tablet is sadly a half-baked tablet. I would rather wait for the Pro version than to go for the RT version that has no apps. Right. That was my point in the whole editorial. Mm-hmm. It's like if I'm gonna an iPad user is frustrated because he doesn't really have a computer. He's got an iPad. It's something different. And so the RT tries to be a computer, but it's not. And it tries to be an iPad, but it's not. And so my point is it's really in the middle, and that middle ground has never worked.
Right.
It has historically never worked.
But from a commenting perspective, from this kind of marketing driving commenters, there are departments. I mean, outside the MVP program, which we just referenced, but in every company, in every company's marketing division, I mean, these people are out there. I mean, there are actually we call people paid shills when they're advocating for a brand sort of baselessly, but there are actual legitimate paid people who exist to be in the comment section. I'm not saying that that's everybody who comments on our site. Certainly, we have a wide range of commenters.
Obviously not. Yeah.
From perspective of moving forward to try and kind of squeeze some positivity out of this very negative situation, because it is destroying the dialogue, and it's having a fight in the comment section. If I see a piece of mine that has 82 comments in 20 minutes, I'm like, it's almost never a positive thing. I'm always like, okay, here we go, and I click in, and sure enough, the Apple versus Android is at it again, or the Windows guys are at the Android guys, and it's like, stop it, just stop it. That's not cool. But here's my request to listeners, because they'll tend what I've tended to find is that the listeners to the podcast are very thoughtful people. And that's based on listener mail and comments on the post and stuff like that. And it's not just because I'm sucking up to you, listeners. But no, I really respect your input. So if you feel the urge to comment on a story, please do. Because I feel like we get a lot of awesome comments that are really thoughtful and that contribute to the discussion, but they don't get upvoted necessarily enough because the fanboys are too busy upvoting and downvoting each other in their fights, and that their comments just get lost at the bottom of the Discuss thread. Really, please comment and continue sharing your thoughtfulness, because we're reading them. We don't have time to reply to every comment or sometimes any comment, depending on how busy the news day is. So please keep driving the discussion forward, and if you see these kind of massive wars, we try and deal with it on the mod side and stuff. But please do your part to downvote idiots.
Can I go full circle and end on a positive note? So, please. Of course, we talked about the fanboys, we talked about the idiots and the morons, and of course, there are the intelligent platform fans, which unfortunately we see less and less as time goes by, which are civilized and have their arguments, and with whom I believe that for me, and I think for you too, it is a pleasure to discuss and even share contrary arguments. So I think that this should go out to those aficionados, if I may, who use different arguments than calling you names or just throwing words out there that a platform in its infancy with 0 users, 0 market share will kill an established platform, which happens to be a market leading one, just because they say so or they feel so. So that's pretty much it. Please don't die out, those intelligent ones. For all the idiots out there, I have a wish. I wish that the upgrade to your current phone will be the best phone you'll ever own.
Exactly. Yes. And I just like to end it as well with this. None of us get paid by any companies. And, for the record, because I always get this comment, you guys are sponsored by Apple, and I'm like, okay, wait a second. Apple products are actually the only devices that we have to pay for to review.
or at least among the very few.
Exactly. Yeah. We rarely pay. We have to pay for some review units to get them on time, and that's just because we want our readers to get the first point. But it was just, the thing is, none of us get paid to do this.
And we have never been invited on an Apple event.
And we have
right.
If
we're Apple fanboys, then we're doing something wrong. Like if we're sponsored by Apple, we have to talk to Apple because something's going very wrong.
We should get paid. We should get paid if we're fanboys. But the point being is, our only purpose is this: we get to try everything. We get to try absolutely everything that comes to the market. And there are some really great products out there, and there are some really bad products out there. It just is. And, I wish that our readers and our listeners would remember that we are trying to be as objective as we can. We're not trying to bash any company just because we want to bash it. We are saying what we think because companies can do better. Yeah. Companies can do better. And we've seen some really great products come to the market. I'll give you an example, the Galaxy S3. I just unboxed it yesterday for the first time, and I'm extremely amazed. It's a great
Congratulations, man.
It's a great phone. And then, I've had cases where, for example, I had the iPhone 4. The thing had antenna gate, and I hated the damn thing. I'm serious. It is the way it is. I have an iPad 3, which I just sold because it's extremely heavy, and I'm going for another one. And that's just the point, listeners. We are not out here to put our personal opinions just because we want to. It's because we actually use the products, and we want you to make an educated decision before you buy something. Because, in our cases, we get products all the time, but in your cases, sometimes you have to sign a 2-year contract and hold that phone for 2 years. Yeah. So we want to make sure that you're doing the right thing when you buy.
That's one of the primary reasons we're here. And I wanted to say that being civilized in the comments does not mean agreeing with us. And this will be my final point on the thing because we got to move on. You can disagree all you like. The part of the most interesting part of reading articles after they're published is seeing commenters come in and say, actually, I have a different view, and like, here it is. And then, civilized debate on that point. Because I'm wrong like once or twice a week on at least one point. And, one of my articles where I get something wrong and somebody corrects me, or even if it's just a typo, I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, but that's the point of an editorial. I mean, editorials are opinion pieces. Sure. News pieces are something else.
Right. But you know what? And part of the point of an editorial is to incite discussion. So if you want to disagree, that's awesome. Just do it in a civilized way. I've had some really civilized disagreements on some of my posts this week, and that's a pleasure. It's just when you come in, you're not contributing anything. You're just dragging everything through the mud. Anyway, we've been through this over and over.
Let's move on.
We've had a great discussion about this. This was a good thing to bring up. Thank you, Tony.
My pleasure.
Before we jump into the news, I've got two things. First of all, while we're in this the kind of pre-show bit, I would like to thank everyone once again for giving us a whole bunch of iTunes feedback. Just really briefly, as everyone knows, I'm the other part of my existence is taken up acting. And I was recently, something happened to me for the first time. I was in a show, a play, that was canceled. And that's a first for me, and it's really sucky. It's really a horrible feeling. And the reason we were canceled is because we didn't have enough audience. And I bring this up because the podcast is doing very well. We're growing at a wonderful rate, and we're getting more and more listeners who are, as I mentioned before, intelligent and cool, and who send us awesome listener mail. But we're certainly going to continue the podcast. There's no danger of the podcast being canceled. I'm not saying that, but we do need audience, and we need more audience. We want more people to hear what we're saying. We're continually revising our format and deciding new things to do and things like that. But please, if you enjoy the show, please do tell some friends.
Spread the word.
Please do. I was going to wait till the end to say that, but I got the sneaking suspicion that people might tune out once they hear the outro come on. But I don't know. Anyway.
Just for a second, I thought that you were going to tell us a story when you went on stage for one of your shows, and like somebody from the third row was yelling like, "Yo, dude, it's Iron Man from Pocketnow on stage."
Please don't do that. Please, because you will probably break me if you do that. No, yeah, I'm waiting for that to happen. No, so anyway, that's just a quick heads up. And also on a somewhat on a completely different note, if you are listening to this podcast on the day it goes up, which is Friday, the 26th, you have until the end of today you still have a chance to win our last Nexus 7 that we're giving away with Amzer. It is the third week of the giveaway. We've given away 2 already to some very happy listeners. I'm actually about to ship out the second one today. So please enter. All the details are at the linked post. If you check out the podcast post, you can have a look. It is an awesome giveaway. We have more giveaways coming up very soon, which we will announce shortly. So stay tuned for that. So I just wanted to make sure.
Where did those go, Michael? One to Russia, one to Hungary?
One to Hungary and one to Russia, yes, sir.
Come on, US guys.
One's going. I know. Hey, get the American. Where the Americans at? Hey. With that aside, let's. We're going to talk a little bit more about Android tablets and Android devices later. But I think considering we have Jaime on the show, and considering this is probably fanboy alert, the biggest news of the block, I want to talk about the iPad Mini. Apple has announced the iPad Mini. Pre-orders have opened for it, as we talked about at the top of the show. Poor Tony.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the iPad Mini. We've all written about it. We had an insane amount of coverage dedicated to it because it is such a significant product. Why is it such a significant product? Jaime, you doubtless have an opinion on this.
Yeah, but my opinion on the Mini is actually, I think you guys read my editorial about what would Steve Jobs think about the iPad Mini.
Yes.
And the reason why is because I think it's a great product because, it's extremely portable and everything, and it gives you all the app ecosystem and everything. It doesn't chop you down on the things you can do with it. The iPad Mini's got some good specs. But I think it could have been greater, and I think that the great thing about this product is the design. If any of you have held the iPhone 5, it's a different phone. I mean, the way it's designed and built, it's just a different phone. It's a very beautifully built phone.
I feel like Tony tweeted about that recently, didn't you?
Yeah,
I just got mine, man.
Yeah.
I'm no longer waiting for that.
I'm serious. The phone does look like a piece of jewelry. It does. It just does. It's a very well-made phone. And yes, by the way, I've been using mine without a case for 3 weeks, and I haven't scratched it, for the record.
Wow.
But, the iPad Mini brings that iPhone 5 design to the iPad. The only problem with this product is that it doesn't have a Retina display, and that's why in my editorial I'm like Apple, you missed the point. I mean, if you're building a smaller iPad, it's because you want to build a dedicated e-reader. And as it turns out, if it doesn't have a Retina display, then you've got 2 tablets in the market already that do, which are the Nexus 7 and the Kindle Fire 7 HD. So I'm like, how is it that I can pay $200 for 2 tablets that can give me the reading experience that I want, and then I have the iPad Mini, which I have to pay $120 more, and I'm not going to get that same experience. So it's those 2 things. The iPad Mini is a great design product. If you're coming from a first generation iPad or an iPad 2, the iPad Mini is a great upgrade. And since the iPad is not really a computer, it's actually just a tablet to consume products. I've come to the point where I always have to be carrying my MacBook Air everywhere I go. So for me, it's like to carry a MacBook Air and an iPad is just a hassle.
Yeah, because the iPad's heavy.
The iPad's a heavy product. So for me to get the Nexus 7 was just an eye-opener. I was completely against 7-inch tablets until I got the Nexus 7.
Me too.
And so I feel that Apple missed the mark with the price tag because it should have been an impulsive buy. I should have seen $200 and I would have been like, $200, that's what I pay for dinner with a couple of friends or beer.
Look at this high roller.
$200, I'll pay for it. But $329 was like, oh, God. And I always take the 32 gig model. So I'm like, oh, God.
That's not Apple, though. They weren't going to do that. They weren't going to come out the gate with something that was priced on the mark because they're Apple. They can charge that premium.
True. But I was like, okay, if you don't give me the Retina display, give me the price. And that's what I was expecting to happen.
One of the 2, right? Yeah.
It didn't happen. And Apple is the new BlackBerry is what I call it. You remember those days when BlackBerry would come up with a new version of the Pearl, but this one had GPS and no Wi-Fi.
Oh right,
And then they brought a second model which had Wi-Fi and no GPS, and then they brought a third model that had all 2 things, and they're just giving people just bites, slowly, and that's what Apple's doing lately. They bring the iPhone 5 with certain specs that are not revolutionary, and then the next model will bring everything, and that's just the way they do it, which I actually am not proud of. I don't like that, but the iPad Mini is what it is. to be honest, readers and listeners, I got an iPad Mini. I did pre-order, and the reason why, the reason why is because I was able to sell my iPad 3 because I was frustrated with the thing. You know, it took 7 hours to charge, and it was extremely heavy. And you know, I think that I'm able to live with the compromise of having a non-retina display for a year. And just, you know, see it. If not, then I'll just sell it. But yes, I did pre-order an iPad.
I feel like that's going to make you happier than anything else, Jaime, on account of, like, you're talking about the Nexus 7 opening your eyes to the form factor, and that's what it did for me. I love the Nexus 7 primarily because it made me fall in love with the 7-inch form factor. And you being, you know, a giant iOS fan, I feel like this is going to be the perfect product for you for a little bit. In spite of that, I feel like that display would drive Brandon up a wall. Because he can see the pixels on it, but, you know. But I
not necessarily, and I have a couple of thoughts on this issue.
Yeah, hit it.
Probably the biggest problem, which was brought up in comments related to the iPad Mini, was the small resolution and the small PPI value. Now, the iPad Mini has a smaller resolution than the Nexus 7, but not necessarily. Are you still guys with me? Because okay, so not necessarily. Let me tell you this much. 1024 by 768 is the resolution of the iPad Mini. Mm-hmm. It is smaller than the resolution of the Nexus 7 because the Nexus 7 has a wide screen form factor. So that means more pixels in height. Mm-hmm. If the iPad Mini would have had a 16 by 10 screen resolution, just like the Nexus 7, it would have had around 1300 pixels in height. But no, Apple's going with 4 by 3, and in a 4 by 3 aspect ratio, 1024 is as high as you can go without going with a new resolution. This is consideration number one. Consideration number two is 1024 by 768 on a 10-inch tablet, which was the iPad 2. Wasn't really such a problem. We didn't see necessarily pixels. This same resolution is on a form factor which is 2 inches smaller, so the pixels will be even smaller and you won't be able to see them. And consideration number three, and the last one, I agree that the Nexus 7 has a higher resolution and a higher PPI rating, but most of the guys who commented were probably also pre-ordering a Surface RT. Now, the Surface RT has a resolution of 1366 by 768 on a 10.6 inch screen.
Massive,
the PPI value is 147.8. The iPad Mini has a PPI value of 168.4. So who are you kidding? Dear Surface pre-order guys, the Surface RT has lower PPI and still you're bashing the iPad. So this is what I was talking about. Get your facts straight. And if you made a mistake, or if you just are unhappy with the product you got, okay, admit it. I wasn't happy about the camera on the One X, even though I bought that phone. So
now
it takes balls to admit it. That's it.
Speaking of the camera, this is interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. The iPad Mini ships with a rear-facing camera.
Indeed.
And it's branded as an iSight camera, right? So it's wait, no.
A 5-megapixel camera.
Yeah, it does.
Is it iSight? Yeah. So, I mean, that's awesome. The Nexus 7 does not have a camera, and frankly, I haven't missed it much. But as we've talked about, we've kind of gone round and round on this discussion of this kind of burned out topic of, like, should you take photos with a tablet? And yeah, you look like an idiot, but sometimes it's a good idea, and it has utilities.
The only camera I have.
Exactly. Sometimes it's the only camera you have, and you look like we're in a world where. We're going to talk about the Galaxy Note 2 later, but we're in a world where phablets are becoming more mainstream, and so you're kind of already walking around with a little mini tablet that you sometimes take pictures with. So I feel like the iPad Mini might be one of the first legit tablets to come out that won't make you look like a total idiot taking a picture with it, and that's exciting to me because even though it's only 5 megapixels, whatever, we know Apple does a great job on their camera optics. And that's cool. I mean, what's your thought there? Go ahead, Jaime.
I think the consensus is that what makes the iPad Mini stand out, and I just saw that by each of the publications that had a hands-on. They were like, man, this thing is thin. Or this thing is like, it's like the perfect idea. You have a big screen on a small device. You know how Dell made that with a 13-inch laptop recently? They fit a 14-inch screen on a 13-inch chassis.
What?
Yeah, they
You're
did
talking
that
some
recently.
science fiction stuff.
I know, but they figured it out, and it's really cool. And so that's what they did with the iPad Mini. They fit a really big screen on a small chassis, and apparently, according to them, it just feels really unreal, if that's a term.
And the bezel is so thin along the sides that there's some software at work, I understand, in the iOS 6 version for the iPad Mini to ignore kind of frivolous inputs from your thumbs when you're holding the thing along the sides, which we've written about. I wrote a piece on this, like on edgeless displays or whatever, and that was one of the things. I was like, we have software that's smart enough to do this. We have palm rejection if you're writing with a stylus, so why can't there be edge rejection? And it looks like that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I guess they figured it out. And regarding the camera, this is the same lens as the iPhone 4, but it has the optics of the 4S. For some reason, I use the 4 and the 4S. I actually like the photos on the 4 more than on the 4S. I don't know why. I think there was just something different there. If you've ever taken a photo with the 5, man, that is like really, really awesome. Obviously I've never owned a PureView, Tony. Don't comment on that.
Circling back just for 1 second for the Nexus 7.
But yeah, I'm really excited to see how it takes photos because yes, it doesn't feel uncomfortable on a 7-inch tablet.
What were you going to say on the 7, Tony?
Yeah, Michael and me have both agreed and concluded in the entirety of the discussion while we were in Berlin that the Nexus 7 is not the device for me.
Yeah.
And, well, it doesn't do what I want to do on a daily basis. I mean, it does, but not the way I want to do things. I mean, I have like 5 completely empty home screens.
That's exactly it. You have to understand, like, listeners, I gave Tony, Tony's looking at one of our Nexus 7s, and he's like, I'm like, I don't know how this discussion came about, but Tony's like, hey, let me set this up the way I would set it up. I'm like, okay, whatever. I go back to doing what I'm doing. I come back, like 5 minutes have passed, and Tony has eliminated everything from every home screen, and like it's just this blank home screen with a dockle on the bottom. And he's like, yeah, this is what it would be.
This works. This works. Yeah. So I got back from Berlin with the limited edition white Nexus 7, which I got from Brandon, and you know what the first application was that I installed? What? It was the camera enabler.
Oh.
Even though I don't take pictures with my camera with my tablet, but I need to have that there. Maybe it's because I'm visually attracted to the icon. I know it has to be there. I know, but
the icon or yourself, man.
Yeah, that is a front-facing camera.
I actually took, you put your finger where the shutter button is. You turn your camera away from you, and you're taking a picture. It's just completely lame. But I want to have a camera on a 7-inch tablet, if it is possible. If it's not too much to ask.
Absolutely, no. It's a great idea. I think for that form factor, it's tough to beat. I mean, it's really a good match for a 7-inch tablet, and I think that I think you can still make the case that on a 10-inch tablet it's still weird, but on a 7-inch, I agree, it's fine. So it's good to see. I'm glad that we've got some pre-orders in on the team here. I was tempted. I will not be pre-ordering one for my personal use just because we're not going to talk about this, but iOS 6 has done really nothing different. Wasn't it striking how they didn't even discuss iOS 6? Like they talked about the apps. They talked about app support versus the Nexus 7.
Well, they talked about that with the occasion of the iPhone 5.
Yeah, but after the iPhone 5, everything just hell froze over when it got released. And
exactly,
for a CEO to have to come on record and apologize over a product, there must have been something really hot happening in there. And, I think that, iOS 6, I do understand the philosophy of why Apple doesn't change iOS 6.
Yeah, I get it, too.
Yeah, I do understand the philosophy. And the problem is none of us three in this podcast are the targeted market. And most of our readers and listeners aren't the targeted market for iPhones or iPads. They're very simplistic products that are designed to cater to everyone in the audience. Not just a specific niche of the market. And, I do understand why they don't want to change it, but I am disappointed with iOS 6. I've said it so many times.
Yeah.
And, the reason why I went, you want to know the only reason why I bought that iPad mini?
Yeah.
Number one, because I had an iPad 3 that I hated. That's the reason. And I was able to sell it. So I sold my iPad 3, and I'm just, and because the Nexus 7 would have been the perfect product if it had a better screen.
Yeah, the screen just sucks.
I'm like, I'd rather put up with pixels than with dull colors.
Can I say, while we're talking about the Nexus 7 and the iPad mini, can I just say that one of the big things at the presentation. I think it was Phil Schiller who was like, "Look at this! Like, look at our competition. It's plastic on the back, and it's lame, and it's stupid. And look at and our thing is so thin, and it's so beautiful, and it's metal, and it's stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, but for a guy who doesn't like cases, particularly on tablets, I don't like cases on phones, but I really don't like them on tablets. For a guy who's going to carry the thing naked, you know what I." Like my Nexus 7, you know what I do to that thing? Like I don't like punt it down the street or anything like that, but I'm rather careless when I toss it around because I can be. It's durable. It feels great in the hand. The thickness is perfect for the type of device it is, and it's just nice to be able to not have to worry about, am I going to damage my expensive looking product?
Agreed.
You know, I sometimes you don't want something to be a pretty piece of jewelry. Sometimes you want it to be functional. And of course, we'll buy a case then. Well, I don't like cases.
No,
so
I don't like. You know, I was talking to an aunt of mine who just got an iPhone 5. She's like, "Why are you wearing your iPhone 5 without a case?" And I'm like, "Tia" means on in Spanish. And I'm like, "This is like buying a BMW and using seat covers on the leather." I'm like,
I don't have those on my Chevy. Good point.
I'm like, if you're gonna buy the thing and you're gonna cover it up, what's the whole point of buying it? Just go buy a freaking Toyota and make yourself happy.
Exactly.
If you're gonna worry about what's gonna happen to it in a couple of years, don't use it.
Right.
So I'm like, this is me. I buy the phone. I buy Apple Care. If something goes wrong, I just smash it with a hammer. I take it to an Apple store and I get a replacement for $50. That's me.
You know what's fun? I will always remember that. There was back in the days of the dumb phone. It was the first camera phone in the United States, the Sanyo flip phone. And
yeah.
You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember that phone. I had it.
Yeah, it was the 5300, and my friend Rick bought it before me. I was like, "Oh my God, you got it!" and whatever. And I noticed like he'd had it for 2 days, and the thing was already scratched to hell. And I was like, "What are you doing, man? This is a $400 phone." He looks at me. He was like, "It was meant to be used." And I was like, "Wow, I can't argue with that, man. You are absolutely correct." That was about 8 years ago, and I've always thought of that when I get my first scratch on it, because you remember. Even in spite of all the stuff we're talking, you do remember the first scratch you put on your device, right?
Oh yeah.
I almost every device I have, I remember what the first damage I did to it is.
Man, my 1X recently, it slipped from my hand and it hit my foot, and
you broke your toe.
Listen, it slid on its screen over all the ceramic tile.
Oh.
And I'm like, so much for Gorilla Glass. It's all scratched. All the borders of the Infinity display got scratched. So I'm like, whatever.
Damn.
Whatever.
Wow.
Anyways, I noticed you have the iPad, the iPad 4 on the topic list as well, and just to add.
Yeah. Can we talk about that for like 40 seconds?
Yeah. Just to add up, I am waiting for Brandon to receive the tablet and to tell me what he thinks about it.
Yeah.
Because I love the iPad 2. I hated the iPad 1 because it was heavy. I owned it for 2 months and I sold it. Then I got the iPad 2, and for me, the iPad 2 was the perfect tablet. It was not too big, not too small. It was not heavy. It just felt good. And the problem with the iPad 3 is the weight distribution, which is the same problem with the 1X. And so the iPad 2 didn't have that problem because the battery was smaller. So I'm like, Brandon, just hold the tablet and tell me what you think, because that's what I would like to tell listeners to expect for the iPad 4. If the weight distribution is better, then I'd buy it. But if not, if I'm going to get the same heavy tablet, I'd rather wait for the iPad 5.
What's the? I haven't looked at the specs on this, guys.
It weighs exactly the same. But again, the problem with it weighs exactly the same as the 3. But again, the problem with the iPad 3 wasn't really the weight. It was only like 2 grams heavier than the iPad 2. The problem was the weight distribution. The battery is just so big and so dense that it just knocks your balance when you're holding it. You have one. And
it's huge. It feels huge.
It feels huge, and you don't get that same feeling with the iPad 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, I'd rather hold on for a full year supporting Pixels with the iPad Mini than, to stand another iPad, 4. I'll wait for the 5. But, again, my opinion is wait for Brandon to get his review unit, and we'll tell you if it's lighter, if it feels different or anything. Because usually these are just design cues.
What before we jump completely, I think we're done with the Mini, but did you have a final point to make on that, Tony?
Yeah, I was going to take this opportunity just to inform our readers that even though the iPad Mini Black and White went on pre-order this morning and both should have delivered by November 2, it seems like the White sold out like 6 hours before this podcast was recorded, and it's shipping now in 2 weeks. So the thing to take away here is, number one, people are either scared seeing those scratches on the black iPhone 5. Number two, either Apple did a piss poor job at predicting their initial stocks, or number three, they do indeed might have some problems in the supply chain, and that's it.
Wow. Well, I guess we'll have to see which side of the story.
I'm expecting a press release on Monday, as they usually put out one, like I don't know, iPad mini pre-orders throughout the weekend. Right. If there will be no press release, then I'm gonna assume that there were poor pre-orders, and if there will be a press release, we'll be happy to find out about the millions of units people pre-order throughout the weekend worldwide. And let's not forget that this time, many countries are in for the pre-order. So I'm expecting, if I can make a prediction right now, I'm expecting around 4 or 5 million units.
We'll see. We'll see.
That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know how many units they're going to move. It's going to be incredible. I think when I was watching the announcement, and when Phil Schiller first pulled out the product, the iPad Mini, I was like, well, this is going to sell incredibly well. And I don't know, what that translates into in millions, but I think they're going to probably break some records here.
Well,
go on. I felt the same. Until they brought the price tag. That's where I thought that.
I don't think that'll matter one bit.
No, not at all.
That's just me. And I think that another mistake that Apple made, and this is just a personal thought, I feel that keeping the iPad 2 was a mistake, because what you're telling current owners of the iPad 2 is that your iPad is still up to date. So, current owners of the iPad 2 are not going to want to go for an iPad Mini or an iPad 4. They're just going to stick to what they have for another year.
It is a little weird that the 2 is still in the lineup. Like we would have thought that the Mini would replace the 2.
No, it's the 2 is the budget full-sized iPad, and the 4 is the expensive top tier. The deluxe one, and the small is just the small one. This is not the thing that pisses me off. Apple went crazy defending themselves that Siri is not compatible with the A5 chip on the iPad 2. Well, guess what? The iPad Mini has the same chip, and Siri is there.
Yeah. And I feel like that was what was it within like 2 weeks or maybe even less time that the development community was like, no, we can totally run Siri on this.
Absolutely.
What are you talking about? Yeah. I want to say about the iPad 4 before we kind of move on here. I think it's really it was very slick of Apple to wait on the iPad 4 refresh, because it's just a refresh. It's like the least exciting iPad news there's ever been. And I love that they just used the iPad Mini event as kind of a mask for that. They're like, hey, by the way, we refreshed the iPad. Anyway, moving on to this really cool product. I think that's pretty awesome, pretty basic. Nothing, it didn't take a genius to come up with that idea, but I really liked it.
We expected that in March.
I don't know. I didn't. The 3. I feel like the 3 still has a lot of staying power. I feel like a lot of people are really annoyed on Twitter. Like they were complaining so hard about this refresh of the iPad 4 to the point where somebody, I forgot who tweeted it, but somebody was like, "Why is everyone acting like their iPad 3 just exploded and they don't have a tablet anymore?"
Good one. Good one.
And you know what's funny? You can't make people happy.
You can't. No.
if Apple takes an extra 6 months to launch the iPhone 4S, everybody goes crazy because or if Apple just launched an iteration of the 4, making the 4S, and if they didn't launch a new revamp with the 5 and completely made their phones obsolete, they're also unhappy. So you just can't make people happy.
No, you can't win. You can't win. But anyway, let's put iOS to bed. This is going to be a long podcast, we know, but we can't be an all-day one. So we're going to move on to Android here. Do you have a closing thought on iOS, either of you gentlemen, before we move on?
No, we've already talked too much about this.
Yeah,
agreed.
Well, I just came back yesterday from the Galaxy Note 2 launch event in New York City. Of course, the Galaxy Note 2 was already released to international markets weeks ago. We reviewed it, but the U.S. launch was the day before yesterday. And it was a massive event. I keep telling people, are like, "Oh, how was it? What did you do in New York?" I'm like, "Well, it was, it's the biggest smartphone there is." basically. So it couldn't be a subtle event. It wasn't going to be like a small little party. Like, you know, Samsung had Kanye West there. They had a giant line of VIPs. They had a bunch of actors whose names I don't know because I'm a poor student of pop culture. But they really went all out for the Galaxy Note 2 release, and I had an opportunity to play with a whole bunch of devices. We got some review units from the various carriers. Samsung actually did something really cool. If you have not seen our video, one of the difficult things about demoing a U.S. release product or a product that's already been out and you've already reviewed it and now it's come out in another market is that they're often very similar. Carriers used to have a lot of power with Samsung where they would be like, no, change the design, put a keyboard on it, do whatever. And now Samsung's so powerful that they're like, no, you're going to release the phone as it is. And that's pretty cool, but then you find yourself doing a video 2 weeks after you've reviewed the phone, and it's like, hey, it's Michael with Pocketnow.com. Again, back with the Galaxy Note 2. Hey, remember AirView? Hey, remember multitasking? But anyway, Samsung had this really cool pop-up studio that they let us use, and they had like,
looking really cool.
Oh,
love that video.
I love the video too, and it was all. I cannot take credit for any of it, except for just being there and demoing the stuff. Because they're real pros there running the studio for us. It was very nice of them to give us those kind of resources. I just wish that I didn't look like I always look, which is exhausted, dead tired, and high and drunk.
High. That's the term.
Yeah, high. That's right. Yeah.
So just quickly, I have a lot of love for Samsung as a company, especially for the US BRs who are great guys and girls.
Yes.
And all the great stuff. But I am disgusted to the point of vomit by the Samsung Galaxy Note 2. And the Samsung Galaxy S3.
Wait a minute.
The problem is that if you open the valve at the sink, Galaxy S's 3s and Note 2s are flowing out. I mean, everywhere you look and everywhere you all you see is the Note 2. We had like 75,000 events, a lot of ads. I actually stopped using my Galaxy S3 because I couldn't put up with all the Galaxy S3 ads on television, and they have adverse effects on me. I know marketing teams have to sell the product. Of course, we can argue that good products don't need that much marketing, but regardless of that, I think they are doing a good job with their products, but marketing in Samsung is an overkill. I don't think you ask somebody on the street who should be, according to their age, gender, and stuff like that, knowledgeable, that you ask them about the Samsung Galaxy S3 or the Note 2, and they don't know about that. So I think marketing with Samsung is an overkill.
By the way, let me interrupt here. HTC, Sony, all these companies, please write this down. This is how you release a product, by the way. A lot of marketing, make people aware of it.
Blow it out of the water.
People still don't know what the One X is in my country.
Yeah.
They still don't know. They look at me and they're like, "Oh man, you're an astronaut."
Well, Jaime, with all due respect, your country doesn't matter, and mine doesn't matter either. No. I mean, our countries don't matter in the general image.
My non-relevant country got the Galaxy S3 on launch date. What I'm saying is that is what a bold company does.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what a bold company does.
And I know I also see the Galaxy S3 stuff everywhere. I'm about to start seeing the Note 2 stuff everywhere. I mean, we have in South Station in Boston, which is a massive train station, there are probably 40 to 50 like ad placement sectors. There are banners and hanging things. And Samsung has blanketed the place. And it's ridiculous. I mean, that blue that's in the Galaxy S3 ad is just everywhere. So they're blowing it up. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, and they're just destroying it. The interesting thing to me is, and this is what I was going to ask somebody at Samsung if I'd had the opportunity to do an interview on that video, and I didn't, and I was sad to miss out on that. But I was like, you know, what's interesting is that Samsung is going to do this with the Note 2. They wouldn't have a giant blowout event like this if they weren't planning on doing what they did with the Galaxy S3 with the Note 2. They wouldn't be launching it on every U.S. carrier almost simultaneously. And the Note 2 is designed well enough, and I said this in the review, so that it feels a bit like a smartphone in your hand, more so than the Note 1 did because of its changed aspect ratio. So it's like, you guys are going to try and push the phablet into mainstream acceptance. Like, the Note was an experiment that went really right. And now, Samsung, you're going to be like, all right, well, hey, the phablet is now going to come to everyone. Because if you're already thinking, as a customer, if you're already thinking of buying an S3, you're going to see the Note 2 next to it and be like, well, this is bigger.
Why not?
Yeah, but I'm already thinking of a 4.8-inch device. Why wouldn't I think about maybe taking a step up to 5.5 inches? And oh, look, it has more capabilities, and it's not really that much bigger, is it? You know, I mean,
it's huge.
It is big, and the problem is that every segment of the market has a limit attached to it. The 4-inch and the 3.5-inch segment, which was the iPhone segment, has a limit. There are people who don't want that small screens, and the 5.5-inch market has a limit to it. It's just the question is, when will Samsung reach that? Because people who loathe huge phones and huge screens will not buy them.
No, they won't. But you know what? There are people who wouldn't have bought a 4.3-inch device. I remember people calling my original Evo huge, and now look at it. I mean, it's still a huge device.
They don't really have a chance now. I mean, 4.3 and 4 are really small phones today.
Right, exactly, and that's the way the market. I think we're going to top out at 5.5. I don't think we're going to go bigger than that.
By the way, listeners, the guy with the biggest hands right now is saying that he's going to puke with the Galaxy Note 2.
That's a good point. Well, anyway, this thing is going to destroy the world. They are really, really going to blow this up, and I'm happy. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for them too.
I want companies to have this type of marketing as well.
And it's not just the marketing thing. It's saying with the Note 1, hey, here's this ridiculous thing, right? And you're like, everyone's like, what are you talking about? What you guys have lost it. And then it sells really well. And then they're like, okay, we've refined this now because we can now reap the rewards of taking a bold step and not just making another aping 4.5-inch device or 4.3-inch whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, and by the way, we're going to bring back the stylus too. What? You guys are on drugs. And then, well, it turns out to be pretty awesome. So anyway, it's you know.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, guys. It's okay. Everything is okay. And I don't have a degree in marketing and stuff like that, but I just do know, I happen to know, I've been working in corporations all my life, that marketing has its downsides. I mean, the consumer doesn't need to be constantly reminded, like every commercial break or every billboard or banner they see on the street, that this is the best thing, the next thing, the biggest thing, I don't know what. And it's not necessarily about Samsung. It's just that Samsung happens at the moment to be using this, I think, in an exaggerated manner. And for people like me, this has an adverse effect. It has a negative effect. I mean, I wouldn't buy a Note 2 if I got it.
Sick of the advertising.
Yeah, I just hate to see that every 10 minutes.
I feel like that they factor that in, right? I feel like the marketing people who are really good at this stuff, they're like, okay, 1.5% of people are going to be so irritated by this that they're going to be turned off. And then they call that an acceptable loss because they want to build this Galaxy brand to such a degree. And that's been working. We've talked before about how, like, you know, it's no longer, oh, what is that? Is it an iPhone or a Droid? It's like, oh, is that the new Galaxy?
Yeah,
and, you know, one of the 100,
one of the billions. Right.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, they're making some mistakes. Some good, like the Galaxy camera sucks. I have.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, you
that
love
thing
it.
Is awesome.
you love it. I don't.
I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing that up because they did announce that for the U.S. as well the other night. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, they announced the Galaxy camera as well. We've played with it endlessly. Tony and I saw it in Berlin. Then Brandon got a chance to get hands on it in New York City. I don't think it's going to sell very well, particularly not on a contract on AT&T.
It misses the point, man. You're going to pay the data plan for a camera?
Exactly.
I mean, come on. What are you going to do?
I think it's pretty nuts. But I think gadget lovers are going to love it. I don't think it's pro enough for real camera enthusiasts to enjoy it.
Nah.
I don't think it's consumer enough for consumers to be like, yeah, I'll pay a data plan for a camera. And I think it misses the mark on a couple things. But just as a cool, different thing, I like it. I don't think it's going to be as successful as the Note was, certainly.
Well, you, my friend, would also love the WebOS toaster.
That is true. You put WebOS on a refrigerator, and I will buy that thing.
Yeah. We established this in Berlin.
We did.
I'm waiting for the Android-powered vacuum cleaner, and Michael's waiting for the WebOS toaster.
By the way, I brought my Veer to Berlin to show Tony, and seeing Anton D. Nagy holding an HP Veer is one of the most interesting things ever because it kind of looks like a pebble in your hand, like a piece of gravel. God, it's a tiny phone. Anyway, real quickly to wrap up the Galaxy Note bit, Verizon slapped their logo on.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of questions to ask for this interview that never happened. And Brandon sends me this thing. He's like, ask about the Verizon branding. I'm like, oh, what did they do? Did they put a big logo on the back? Oh yeah, their 4G LTE logo. Oh, it's big. Whatever. No.
You know what that reminds me of?
Hold on. Wait, well, let me tell everybody what they did. They actually slapped. They slapped the Verizon Wireless logo on the home button, if you haven't seen the story. And not just the check mark, which would have been offensive enough. The check mark and the Verizon Wireless, like the full brand.
The full trademark logo.
The full logo is on this
Have you guys
tiny
ever
home
gone
button.
to Texas
It is the most
and
absurd
seen these
thing
guys
ever.
driving their F-250s with a big ball sack hanging from the bottom of the truck?
Yes. It's
That-
an awful
That
thing.
is what the Verizon logo looks like on a small home button.
God.
It looks like something that shouldn't be there.
That's a really
It's like the balls belong to a horse or a frickin' cow, not a car.
The question here and the problem by itself is more severe and more serious than of course we're joking, but we have talked endlessly about how Samsung has grown into that company which is now a la iPhone and a la Apple imposing its products on carriers untouched. The Galaxy S3 was a good example of that. They no longer went with 50,000 variants for every carrier in the world, 4 separate variants in the US. And the Galaxy Note 2 was expected to be that, and it was that for AT&T and for T-Mobile, and it's that for Sprint. Now the question is Verizon that ballsy to tell Samsung, my friends, if you want to sell this phablet on my carrier, it's going to be on my terms? Or is Verizon that unimportant for Samsung that they say, okay, get your logo on it?
No,
Which is
Samsung can't afford. I think that factors into this strategy of theirs, right? I think if it had come down to that, if it had come down to such a my way or the highway kind of thing with this branding, Samsung can't afford to lose Verizon if they're trying to push the Galaxy Note 2 as hard as they want to. They cannot afford to lose the biggest carrier in the United States.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
exactly.
So then again, to get back to what Jaime said, it's about balls, and Verizon has bigger balls than Samsung.
Yeah, I think look at Samsung. Look at what they're like. Well, we don't have to change the design. We don't have to add a keyboard, do anything crazy. All we have to do is silk screen a logo onto this button. And people might hate it, but you know what? It's going to get us access to 80 million customers or 90 million customers.
And to make a point here, Verizon actually sold more Galaxy S3s than they sold iPhones last quarter, I think it was.
Oh, really? Now that is telling.
Yeah,
I know Samsung should include a sandpaper in the box.
I know.
Oh,
some
that's a good
nail
idea.
polish remover. Yeah. Anyway, let's get away from that. That's just so annoying. I want to kind of power through the rest of Android here pretty quickly. This was really cool. The Nexus 10 Quick Start manual leaked. Now we're pretty confident this is legit, right? This is not.
We'd like to believe it is.
We would, yeah.
And it looks like the flying saucer tablets, man. I mean, look at that.
It's not at all what I would have expected. Like, you think Nexus 10, and maybe involuntarily you're like, all right, so your brain blows up the Nexus 7 to Nexus 10 dimensions. Not at all.
That's what I was expecting.
Yeah,
that's what I was expecting.
But I'm glad. And, maybe it's ugly, and we haven't laid eyes on the actual product, or at least I haven't. But it reminds me of a Galaxy Note 10.1 with, like, bulged out. Like, it looks like somebody took a straw, put it in the Note 10.1, and like blew into it until its size bulged.
Michael, they have to avoid litigation from Apple.
Well, of course.
Don't forget that.
Sure, and I love it. I love the design. It looks like a pad from Star Trek Voyager, and I'm into that. So,
I want to ask you guys a question. I'm going to make a point.
Do them in that order.
Name one, just one. Give me one top-selling landscape-oriented tablet. One.
Yeah, that's rough.
Don't kid yourself. There aren't any. The top-selling tablets on the planet are the iPad, the Kindle Fire, and the Nexus 7. Mm-hmm. Those are the three tablets that have sold the most in history. Even the Nook tablet, I think, sold more than a lot of Samsung tablets.
Yeah.
They've been trying to push this landscape form factor ever since the Motorola Zoom, and it does not work. 16:9 on a thick tablet is heavy, and it's uncomfortable, and people don't like it. People ended up buying the Zoom and returning it. And that's why this tablet, I'm sad because I wanted 4x3 or whatever. The Nexus 7 is a perfect example of how you can fit a 16:9 screen on a sort of a too long form factor, and they made it portrait oriented. Mm-hmm. That's what they should have done with this tablet. And I feel that it's going to fail. I sadly feel that it's going to fail.
It's a solid prediction. I can't necessarily disagree with it. Landscape is a weird orientation to choose for the primary orientation of a tablet. I get why you would do it, but it's tough. It's a tough case to make. I don't have a whole lot of confidence for it.
Now, Michael, can you imagine my Nexus 10? How would that look on 10 inches of empty screens?
Oh, I know. It would be the most absurd thing ever.
And just for me to make a point, and a lot of people don't understand this, but for example, I worked in airlines for 15 years. And for example, do you guys know why seats on an airplane are most of the cloth is tinted blue?
No.
So that they don't need to wash it when they're dirty.
They're dirty. Okay, no.
I would guess, yeah.
Blue actually is a color that inspires both calmness and royalty. So it gives the psychological impression to customers that the airline is actually a top-tier airline, and it also brings calmness to users. So my point is, everything has a psychological effect on people. Everything.
Sure.
The reason why Mazda used it. Why did the Mazda 3 become the most popular Mazda ever sold? Or the 323, I think it was. It was because of that smiley face in front of the car that was drawn by the design.
Which I hated so much.
Yeah, but people loved it. The average user loved it. Everything has a psychological purpose of being the way it is.
So you're saying the Nexus 10 is like, as a landscape device, sends the wrong message right off the bat?
All the landscape tablets that have ever been launched have not sold for many reasons, true. But why is it? What's the difference between, if you think about it, it's only hardware-oriented differently, but everything has a psychological impact on people. Absolutely everything. The colors that you choose. For example, why do you think that sharp borders on anything feel offensive for people? Have you ever seen the LG, what is it, the Optimus View? I mean,
yeah.
A device with sharp corners that actually sold. And it's just
the Razor had sharp corners. Like it's not an all-encompassing.
It all depends, and I can tell you this much: since Google's Android is not a 4x3 platform, in a 4x3 supporting platform, they don't have really much choices but to go with a landscape form factor, because anyone who has ever held a 10-inch Android tablet and has turned it into portrait, that thing sucks.
That thing sucks.
Yeah,
but they don't have a choice but to go with landscape.
Well, I installed CM9 or whatever the hell it was on the HP touchpad for one of my first videos for Pocketnow, and using Android in portrait orientation isn't fun, but on a 4x3 device like that, it's not bad. It's certainly much better than it is on like the Motorola Zoom or something with a 16:9 where you just feel ridiculous holding the thing up. But what's concerning to me about the Nexus 7, this will be my last point on the Nexus 10, is that they have not solved the problem of this app question. And Apple made sure to nail them on this when they were comparing the iPad mini to the Nexus 7. They're like, look at the app experience when you stretch a phone app up. Yeah. Like, it looks like crap. And it does. It looks better on the Nexus 7 than it does on any other Android device because it's smaller. You stretch a phone app to 10 inches and it's still, look at Pandora running on a 10-inch Android tablet. It is hilarious.
Who knows? Maybe Android 4.2 will bring something like, I don't know, small windows, and you'll launch Twitter or Facebook on a 10-inch tablet, and it will take up only a small part of the screen instead of just maximizing and seeing empty space everywhere.
Which would be awesome, because we've learned that that floating windows are actually like possible and awesome on Android devices with the Galaxy Note 2, and like the only good thing about the 10.1 maybe.
Yeah. Let's see what Monday brings.
We'll see. We may see Android 4.2 on Monday. Joe Levi has a great piece up. We can't talk about it because we have to move on, but you should. I'm looking forward to Google's event on Monday. While we're talking about 16:9 tablets, let's do it. Let's jump into this Surface news. The Surface, the Surface RT kind of had its coming out party. It started. There was a press conference yesterday. It's gone into today. We've got some hands-on coverage on the site. Adam Lean got his hands on about 14 billion in Windows 8 tablets. Yeah, it's like every 2 minutes, it's like hands-on with this, hands-on with this,
and all 14 billion of them, by the way. not just some of them.
Yeah, not just some of them, all of them. I mean, so this has been cool. It's been fun to watch the flood. We're gonna have our full Surface review up early next week. So just stay tuned for our impressions on that. But it's so interesting to watch the internet. And I did this for an editorial I wrote yesterday about pre-orders, where Tony and I were talking about, what does the Surface say about the state of pre-orders, and I kind of whipped up a piece on that, and everybody hated it, and that's cool, whatever. But it's so interesting to survey the internet and see the reactions from sites that I like, and I probably looked at reviews from eight to 10 different tech sites, and it's interesting to see what the reactions have been so far. And pretty much everybody agrees that the hardware is really amazing with that Vapor MG, that magnesium sort of weird alloy that they're doing there. But also a lot of people are saying that it is because of what we were just talking about with this 16:9 aspect ratio, that it is very awkward in portrait. And of course it is, and that's why the capacitive Windows button is down in landscape orientation on the long side. I have to admit to having forgotten that when Microsoft announced the Surface, I knew that. I'm sure I wrote about it, but it wasn't until the reviews started coming out that I was like, oh, yeah, this is one of those really long tablets. That's weird. Combined with the not negligible weight of the thing, and the fact that several reviewers said that it really feels like it wants to be on a desk. It wants to be a computer with the touch keyboard deployed. Like, I don't know. I've been kind of damaged by the iPad 3. I've felt the pain of carrying around a tablet that is too heavy for me to carry around comfortably in my daily use. And I'm not saying it's a very heavy thing, and commenters like, oh, you got to lift some weights if you think that's heavy, and shut up, just shut up. But
they called you puny, man.
Exactly, man. It's like, oh man, what, you think that's big? You got to do some hand stretches if you don't want to carry that. Shut up.
But I think that I remember. I'm trying to remember when I saw this documentary about how important design is to a product. Yeah. And, I think that, the reasons, I think that tablets are made in landscape orientation for all the wrong reasons. Why do you use a tablet the most for? And the most you use it for, or at least in my particular case, is to consume content, like visit websites, like the active thing of looking at Twitter, looking at Facebook. And usually I'm doing that standing up, holding the tablet and moving around the kitchen or moving around the living room or stuff. And if I am forced by the design of the tablet to only be able to hold it one way, then it just becomes a cumbersome experience.
Particularly
because I would like to choose my orientation and to not have the tablet optimized to watch a movie that I rarely do.
Yes, agreed. And when you're using it one-handed, if you're walking around, you can deal with that in portrait because of the physics. But you're holding it in landscape orientation. You've got all this weight just extending out, and you're only anchoring it on one side with your hand. It's very uncomfortable. It's very annoying.
Okay, am I the only one who likes the design of the Surface?
Yes.
Oh, okay. By the way, let me just make a point here. Please. I like the design.
I really like the design of the Surface too.
I like it. The design is cool. I would love to see a phone with that design, by the way.
Oh, me too. I think we most certainly will.
I feel it's futuristic. I feel it's cool. I feel my problem with the Surface is that I feel that it misses the point. But it's us that miss the point about the fact that, like you said, it wants to be on a table, and we're trying to look at this as a tablet.
Right, and it's not. It's like a different category of convertible more so than it is a real tablet, and that's. It's either good or bad.
Here's the point. If they would have made the Surface Pro with the sharp edges and everything, that I wouldn't have minded, because it's really a tablet that's designed to be more on the table, and you have the option of picking it up, but it wasn't really designed to be used that way. But the problem with the Windows RT is that it's actually designed to be a tablet. It's actually designed to cater to users that either choose a tablet or a computer. And the problem is that the design is not really optimized for you to hold it and carry it around. And it's funny because you see these ads, and these guys just make it look so easy, and they've got these beach bodies hidden inside their shirts and everything, and they're not telling you about this. But seriously, that's just the point. The tablet, it has sharp corners. And I'm like, when I got the comments yesterday, I'm like, listen, man, you want to buy the thing and just hold it whichever way you want. Just buy the damn thing. I don't care what you do. I'm trying to tell you.
Justify your purchase to me.
I'm owning so many tablets I've owned 6 tablets already. I want to tell you what it's like to carry a device with sharp corners. I own the Zoom.
Yeah.
And
the Zoom is probably
terrible.
the closest analog, right, to this device as far as like a form factor consideration goes. And Tony, are you saying that you like the you like the 16:9? You like the landscape focus? What do you like?
I do like the 16:10 aspect ratio on the Surface. I do like the outer aspect in general on the Surface, and I don't care about the weight and about the weight distribution. I'm a big guy. I can cope with that. So my biggest problem with the Surface, the RT version, is that it's running Windows RT. So my problem is with Windows RT, not because I would be or somebody would imply that I'm a hater. No, I'm not a hater. Right. I would love this to succeed, but I'm looking at Windows RT, and I think Windows RT is the Windows Phone 7 for the tablet.
Now, this is from a. I want to talk software for a second, but from a design perspective, I like how the two play together. I want to say that because I feel like the consensus that maybe is being forced on everyone is that by all these reviews and first impressions is that, wow, the hardware's great, the software's half-baked. Like that's kind of the theme that I took from maybe 6 out of 10 reviews. But they play so nicely together from a design perspective. HTC, when they dropped their Windows Phone 8X and 8S, they were like, so the design inspiration was, what if you took a tile from Windows Phone 8 and stretched it out into a phone? That's an awesome, cool concept, and I feel like the Surface thing, the Surface does that well. Like Windows 8 on active on the screen, turned on the Surface. All those square tiles play really nicely with the Surface's really, really square design and sharp corners, and I like that they play well together in that respect. I agree that Windows RT is maybe a little bit.
I have my reservations about the Metro UI, but I'm not going to go into that because I'm going to take too long. I just want to say this. Want to say this. The problem with the Surface RT is that, and as I mentioned it yesterday, the problem with buying a crossover SUV is that you're not getting the full power of a full-blown SUV or a truck, but you still have to pay for it, and you're not getting the speed of a sedan.
This is a good analogy.
So you're not really getting the full-blown experience of either one of these. You're just getting a mid-tiered product. The problem with the Surface RT is that there are no apps. There are no apps whatsoever. I can't believe Microsoft can't figure this out. Seriously, we're talking about the company that has a CEO that stood in front of people with a song saying developers. And where the hell are the developers now? They're not.
Let's not forget, guys. This is a vicious circle. I mean, in order to drive developers to a platform, there has to be a certain demand for that platform, and vice versa.
Yeah, but the problem with this is that Microsoft is not to be trusted. We have a company here who's changed their mobile strategy twice in the last 5 years. They had Windows Mobile 6.5. They ditched it. They came out with Windows Phone 7. Now they pretty much ditched it, and everything has to be catered to Windows 8. And people are just waiting to see because they clearly see that Microsoft doesn't understand where they're going.
But they do.
And that's just my point.
I think Windows 8 is the final step. If Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 are not the final thrust for Microsoft, then well,
and there's always Windows 9.
Yeah.
Okay, but to make
you're saying developers don't trust them, right?
To make my point, and the point that I was trying to make with the editorial yesterday is this. The good thing about buying an iPad is that you're getting a tablet that's not trying to be anything else but a tablet. That's what makes the iPad special. The fact that it's not trying to copy anything.
Jaime, I agree with you, but I have read a very interesting comment. I don't know on which of our posts was. Thankfully, we had lots of comments. So regardless, there was this guy who was telling me in reply to one of my comments that I am physically incapable of accepting the Surface for what it is. So he was advocating for this idea that the Surface is a new breed of products of consumer electronics, and that we need to accept that as it is and stop comparing it with Ultrabooks on one hand or tablets on the other hand.
Okay, fine. I'll accept that. I just won't buy it. That's the thing. It doesn't invite me to buy it.
Freedom of choice.
My point is this. It doesn't invite me to buy it. And it doesn't invite me to buy it because the platform is... I have to choose over a product that doesn't want to be a tablet and it doesn't want to be a laptop. So why am I going to pay for Windows RT if I could just pay for Windows 8 Pro on a Surface Pro and get the full-blown experience of Windows? That's my point. The problem is that they're trying to create a product that doesn't need to be created. It's like if you tried to create a car with 3 wheels. What's the point with it?
I don't know. I think that this is a very, very compelling strategy. I don't know if it will be successful. I think the idea, the theory of like, don't carry a tablet and a phone. Excuse me, don't carry a tablet and a computer. Carry something that can be both. Like, this almost never works, and I get it. It's so hard to do because like you're saying, the better product is the product that knows what it is and does the one thing it does well. This is why the pad phone is such a ridiculously cool concept that's never going to work, because I don't think it does well in either of its configurations. Not that I've held one, just a disclaimer there, just from everything I've read. So I would love to see this work someday, because I don't like carrying multiple devices. If I'm going to the coffee shop to write something, I don't want to carry a tablet and a computer, but I have to. That's annoying. So I would like it if it could work. What is your saying?
I have 2 sayings. First one is in Romanian, and it goes like this: "Șicolare și pe jos," which means both on a horseback and by foot. It's not possible. And the other one is in Hungarian, which says that egy seggel nem lehet nagyon megölni 2 lovat, and it goes like, you cannot really put your ass on 2 horses. You fall in between.
I love both of those. I understand. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think those are perfect analogies.
That's like that calls for a shot right now. Where's my scotch?
It does.
Okay, let's move on.
Let's move on. That's great.
That's coffee poisoning and RT poisoning.
Anyway, so regardless, we'll see. We're going to have a lot more on the Surface. I want to ask this question because this is such a cool headline, and I love the question. This is from Steven. With so much Surface interest, who's buying the other Windows 8 tablets?
I am.
Fascinating idea. And you know what? I am too, because I want to buy the NVX2. I would prefer it if HP would give us one. But,
I look stupid raising my hand right now, but I was doing
that too. You were raising your hand? I got my left hand raised. No, I get
no comment on my end.
So, but here's the thing. Like, we know about these other products, right? We know about these convertibles and tablets running Windows 8 from other manufacturers. I don't think anyone else does yet because, of course, the marketing hasn't kicked in yet and whatever. But, it's a valid question. Surface is going to get the most buzz out of all these, I think, because who's excited about an HP product out in the regular world? Nobody. HP doesn't excite people in the consumer way. They even said it when Apotheker was like, we want to be as cool as Apple, and we're not. That's maybe the only thing he got ever.
No, but I'll make a point. And I'm sorry to interrupt, Tony. Just a small point. I think that ASUS made a really compelling design with the Transformer Prime, with making a keyboard dock that brings the addition of a battery and a USB port, and just making. I think they made the perfect concept for what a Windows 8 tablet has to be. It has to be a product where if I get the keyboard, that keyboard actually has to mean something.
Yeah.
It has to give me extra battery. You don't use USB when you're on tablet mode because you're not going to be carrying the tablet with a wire. But you use USBs when you have it on the table. So that's like the perfect idea. You have the keyboard dock where everything is, and then you use it as a tablet whenever you don't need it. That is the perfect Windows 8 design, and I am the one that's going to be getting one.
Nice. That's a solid point. Tony, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask you one thing and one thing only. If you remember back in Berlin when we were there with the occasion of IFA, how many roughly Windows 8 devices did you see?
God,
around 5 to 10?
So many. Yeah, there were a ton.
Okay, NVX2 aside, which one would you buy now?
I don't remember any of the others.
See, that's my point. Yeah. I remember the Acer W5 something and the Acer W7 something.
I remember,
and
the
Samsungs, but still none of those appeal to me, and not necessarily because the hardware, because we don't know that much about this entire Windows 8/Windows RT thing. I mean, Microsoft did a piss poor job letting us know what they are doing, or they made a fantastic job in keeping us in the dark.
Yes, it's one of the two, and whether it's a good or a bad, they definitely did it. So I don't know. We'll have to see how this goes, like moving forward. But I think it's really cool, and I think we get tangled up in the details a lot, and I just want to mention that it is really cool to be watching a new platform kind of try and take hold. Obviously, Windows 8 itself, it has to be a success. Microsoft will make it a success on the desktop, but to watch it try and like filter into this tablet convertible category, and to watch Windows Phone 8 try and grab some hold, I mean, that's awesome. And it doesn't matter. It's not that it's from Microsoft. It's not that it's a Windows. It's just leave all that aside. It's a platform that doesn't have much share, trying to get to a place where they're significant, and that's awesome. It's cool to watch that happen.
True.
So
agreed.
I'm excited for the next couple months.
I'll give it to them. I'll just ask Joe Belfiore, please, if you're listening to this, do me a favor. Whenever you stand and do a presentation, talk about anything else that's not the live tiles, please. There is so much more to Windows Phone than the little tiles, you know. And do me another favor. You know that People Hub. Whenever I see somebody that I have 1,000 comments on my 1,000 people on my Facebook, and so whenever I see an image of somebody that I remember, I'm like, oh, here's this guy, and I touch my Windows Phone 7 people icon, and it takes me to just the whole list, and it doesn't even remind me of who that person is. I forgot their name. I'm like, damn, this tile should be smarter.
Draft a letter. Draft a letter. We'll send it along.
Dear Microsoft.
Joe, please, Joe, talk about anything else that's not the live tiles. I'm bored. I got the point, so let's move on.
Speaking of Windows Phone, this just very quickly to touch on this. Stephen has a cool piece from yesterday. Microsoft exec blames smartphone missteps on desktop security focus. Very interesting. Tony asked me to include this in the rundown, and I just took a look at it and I was like, wow.
Yeah, well,
this is what happens when the company
have been here.
Yeah.
This would have been the perfect topic for a role play.
Oh God, I'm glad. This is the only time. This is the only time I will ever say that I'm glad Brandon is not here at this very moment.
I'm not going to force you to do one. Let's just imagine this situation.
And it's only. I want to make it clear. It's only because of the role play. I love Brandon. I love having him on the podcast. I'm just saying. I just don't want to do a role play right now. Go ahead, Tony.
We're not talking Microsoft in the late 70s when they are doing things in their garage. We're talking Microsoft in the 2000s when they are one of the biggest companies in the world with dedicated sections of their company for every aspect of Microsoft. So when somebody says, excuse me, nonsense, because I don't want to use the C word like this, I just come to think of it that the entire Windows Mobile / Windows Phone team who was working allegedly on something got a memo, and they said, I'm sorry, I've talked to the big ones, and we're now shifting focus on security. So what did that team do? Did they just go to work and do nothing for like 2 or 3 years? I mean, I can't really understand this as an excuse. You have hundreds of people working on the phone segment, hundreds of people working on the Windows desktop segment. Just because you're shifting focus to computers, it doesn't mean that you are ignoring, firing, or just bringing your people in the Windows Phone segment to work and you're paying them for nothing. This is a lame excuse, and it's not working with me.
Yeah. And BlackBerry must be like really laughing at this. You know, the guys in the room who figured it out before they did.
Oh yeah, well, I don't think they're laughing about anything these days.
True, but yeah. Seriously, I mean, Apple figured it out with iOS 2. So come on.
Yeah, it's that thing that companies do where they're like, you know, hey, we need to talk about how we fell off the top of the mountain, and now we're kind of trying to claw our way out of the moat.
For a phone?
Sure, man. I mean, any excuse, right? This is a corporate thing, and I like peeks into companies and where stuff goes wrong, but I agree with you that I don't. But I don't really buy it.
Yeah,
yeah. No, it's a good call. The last thing I want to touch on in Windows Phone and Windows is Jessica Alba, famed actress, has been spotted with a Nokia Lumia 920 on the scene. Normally, this would not be terribly newsworthy, but as we know, Windows Phone 8 is heavily dependent on the Nokia Lumia push, and to see a pre-release device, which, by the way, we have been able to touch, but with strict understanding that we're not to touch a damn thing in the software. Like, they are so paranoid about anybody getting a hand on the software that it's interesting to see a pre-release device in the wild, and I almost wonder if this 920 of Jessica Alba's is maybe running Windows Phone 7.8.
It's a dummy.
Do you think it's a dummy?
No.
Well, I think she's carrying it like with her white iPad, which is an interesting justification here. So I don't know. Cool to see. It's good to be a celebrity, as the headline says.
Let me tell you this much. If this would have happened somewhere else, you wouldn't have spotted Jessica Alba with the Lumia 920. The Lumia 920 would have spotted you with Jessica Alba.
That's a good point.
And that's all I'm going to comment on this.
Well, I'm looking forward to more. I think I just got it. I'm looking forward to more on the 920 and other Windows devices. There was a lot more news from this week, but we have done something that I don't want to do very often, but we have to sometimes. Is that we last week we had to skip listener mail. I don't want to do that again. We've got a couple pieces to read. I do want to say to listeners that unfortunately we're getting enough listener mail now, which is so great. It's so awesome. But the dream is kind of over. We can no longer read all of them on the air, and we've actually run out of time to reply to all of them personally. So I'm sorry about that.
You should get an assistant.
I was saying this last night. When I was like, I have to get up early to do this podcast, and the girl I'm seeing is like, why don't you can she get an intern or something like that? I go, well, that would be great. Tony, let's get an intern.
Yeah, sure. Give her my email address.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah, she just volunteered. No, the thing is that there's just so much of a volume of message traffic. We can't deal with it all. So thanks you so much, everyone. Really, it's awesome. So just a tip, and this is something that I wish somebody had told me when I used to write into podcasts and my stuff would never get read. If you want your piece of mail to be read on the air, it should not be too long. We get a lot of essays that are really interesting, but we can't read them. They should probably include a question. And it should be a topic that's broad enough for many people to be interested in. So if we get too specific, we can't really.
And it should be up to 100 words long.
Yeah, that's a good threshold. And if you are a constant writer in, we will try and get you on the rotation. Please understand if we have to skip you in favor of somebody new. We got to give everybody a chance. But please keep writing in. I cannot emphasize that enough. We still need your mail. So let's get right to it. We have a piece of mail from Mark in Limerick, Ireland. I love when people from Ireland or people from Europe say lads. Well, lads, love the podcast. Love it. Listen to it in bed the day it comes out. I love the topics, opinions, and personalities. My question is, why do you think carrier prices in the U.S. are so dear? This isn't translating too well to my slang filter, but I think I sort of get it. Mark is making the point that with 3 Ireland, which is a carrier, you can get the Galaxy S3 for free on a 2-year contract, paying about $80 a month. And you get 15 gigs of data a month? Geez, that's awesome. And then this is something called Flex Units, which is 1 minute of a call or 2 SMS. That's awesome. So it's cool to learn about how other carriers bill stuff. But I think the question is why is the price why is our phone pricing so out of whack? Is it population, network maintenance, or maybe even something to do with your culture, or maybe you just have a lot of money?
It's actually the last one.
Is it the last one? We're just swimming in money all the time. Yeah. No, if Anton is on the podcast, ask him about prices in Romania.
Yeah, you should ask him next time.
Yeah, say again?
You should ask him next time.
Yeah. So, I don't know. There is a carrier here in the U.S., and maybe it's telling that it's one of the carriers that has a strong international influence. T-Mobile USA, which is owned by Deutsche Telekom, is the only nationwide carrier in the U.S. that offers this kind of pay for the phone as you go kind of thing, where it's like you can get a very high-end phone for very cheap, but you're paying off the cost of the phone over the course of the contract, not just paying off the subsidy through your monthly bill. So I don't know. And the rest of the guys, the rest of the carriers are like, pay us $299, and that's the subsidized price, and you'll get a Galaxy Note 2. I don't know why that is. I don't know what the difference is. I think it might be cultural. I think it might be that Americans, were a little late to the cell phone game, and we got used to high prices. And then the carriers were like, well, we're going to take advantage of this?
I don't think so. I find U.S. prices to be rather cheap. And since I've been asked about the prices in Romania, I'm going to bring you this example. So, Mark, write this down. I'm talking about the Galaxy S3. We don't have the Note 2 just yet. So the Galaxy S3 on a certain carrier here who uses animals to describe its contracts, you'll know who I'm talking about. So first option, 159 euros. 2-year contract, 49 euros per month. 199 euros with 2-year contract, 39 euros per month. And 360 euros, 2-year contract, 23 euros per month. You can make a calculation and see what the end price will be for this phone.
Yeah. But see, that's interesting because in the U.S., and I want to hear if this is true in South America, like in the U.S., it doesn't matter. You don't have to pick a certain rate plan to get a certain pricing on the phone. Like the phone, if you get a contract, you can get a $40 a month plan or you can get a $200 a month plan. It doesn't matter. The subsidized cost of the phone will remain the same.
Yeah.
Which, I guess makes it easier to talk about, but makes it a little more frustrating if you're like, I'm going to be spending $200 a month with you guys. Why am I paying the same amount for the phone? I get that that's confusing and weird. Is that the same case in South America?
No, and here it's different. You can either go for a subsidy, but the subsidy price changes depending on the plan.
Okay.
For example, the iPhone, the higher the plan that you get, if you get like the $100 plan, you get the phone for like $200. But the problem is that prepaid here is actually much bigger than postpaid, than credit. And the reason why is because, the country sadly, it's not economically a stable country, so a lot of people don't have very good credit scores. And so it's hard for them to get, to either pay the bills or keep the habit. But, the country has just boomed with prepaid. And so what they do is that they offer you the phone on 12 months, no interest on your credit card or whatever you have, any sort of means. Yeah. And then you just get a prepaid plan. And that's what they do mostly. And the reason why is because, for example, an iPhone 5 here, a brand new iPhone 5, you want to get it, it'll cost you $1,500.
Whoa.
$1,500. That's how much the phone costs here, and that's just the way it is. But in my point, I studied business, and for example, I feel really bad for Canadians because they have to pay so much more money and sign in for 3-year contracts to keep a phone.
Oh yeah, the 3-year contract. Yeah,
that is like crazy. But the only reason why carriers do that over there is because they can, because people are actually willing to pay for it.
But I think in Canada they also have the option to go with 1 year or 2 years.
They have the option for 1 year, 2 year, but right? They mostly go for I think that's what I've seen. I'm no expert. I wish that some of our Canadian listeners would just chime in on the comments here.
Yeah.
But what I've heard is mostly it's 3-year contracts if you want to get like a full subsidy or stuff, and that's just crazy. I mean, a phone barely lasts 2 years. It barely does. But the point is they do that because they can. Because you can get a Galaxy S3 in this country cheap. Yeah. You can get it for a lot less money, and that's just because Samsung is pushing it, and they just want to push it really hard. You can get a BlackBerry really cheap here. So it just, the thing about the United States is that,
that would be awesome. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Wrap it up, Jaime.
No, I'm sorry. I was making a stupid joke. I don't know. I think it is. We have so many different models and in so many different countries, and it all works really differently. I don't know. Mark, I wish I had more American insight into it other than my initial complaint, which was, I think we pay more, and then Jaime comes along and says $1,500 for an iPhone 5. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and we pay a lot more for everything. So the point being is, right. I think that they tropicalize each of their strategies depending on the market. That's just the way it is. If the market has the capability to pay for something, they'll charge you more. That's the way it is.
Well, let's move on a little bit here. We got a piece of mail from Kenneth Meadows in Ohio. Guys, I love listening to your podcast while I wash cars at work. That is an awesome place to listen to our podcast. That's sweet.
That's a dirty thing to say to the podcast.
It definitely makes the day fly by. So my question, I bought my blue Galaxy S3 back in June from AT&T. Sadly, 30-plus days after I activated, the red one was released. I hate it when that happens. I was not able to get it because my 30-day return period was up. I was wondering if you would have a solution to changing the color without a case. Thanks, Kenny from
Forget
Ohio.
about it.
No, I do have one.
I've got one.
I do have one.
Well, sandpaper?
No.
So, Kenny, go on to Pocketnow.com and search in the search box for this. HTC Touch Diamond Adam Lane Edition.
Oh, yes.
Since you are in the car wash business, you most probably have somebody who works at a paint shop. So just paint that phone. You can take the back of it, and if they're pros, they can paint it real nice for you,
mask off the
and
bezel
you can
and
have
everything.
whatever color you want.
Oh, it's awesome, and this
Even
sounds
a
like
chameleonic one.
This sounds like a really ridiculous solution, and it sounds like something that, and it probably costs a little bit. But if you look at Adam's special edition Touch Diamond, I remember asking him, I'm like, where did you get that? That's outrageously cool. So yeah, automotive detailing shop will do that. But there's also some retail outlets. Colorware is probably the most well known. They only do color changes on the iPhone and on the BlackBerry, and they're not cheap. But there were rumors that they were going to do the S3. Who knows? They don't do it yet. But anyway, the name of that site, if you want to keep an eye on it, Kenny, is Colorware, COLORWARE. And I was also looking at a quick Google search gave me Gelaskins.com, GELA skins. They have a lot of wraps that are kind of graphical. They're not color-changing wraps necessarily, but they're, so...
Like decals?
Yeah, they're like decals. Yeah. And I think a lot of the commenters were saying that, like, those will peel off on the Galaxy S3's curves, and, they might.
That's
but
probably.
Yeah,
but they're really cool. And, the problem with the Galaxy S3, have you found out how much swapping the housing costs? I mean, the screen assembly alone costs like $250.
Yeah, because
so don't try to go that route. Just get a Gelaskin or get a Colorware and just get a couple of them and swap your colors every week or something.
Yeah. So, or, if you want to go the cheaper route, just get a different color battery door, get a couple of those and swap those out. And unfortunately, the face won't be fixed, but hope that's helpful.
Or you can get a Samsung cover, that thing which I hate so much.
The book thing,
which comes with a back plate and the thingy which opens like a book.
That's true.
It adds bulk, but it has color options.
That's a good call.
And by the way, Kenny, I have the blue Galaxy S3 by choice. I find it to be the most beautiful one, so I think you got a cool phone there. You probably
but he wants to be unique.
Right.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. I'll give it to him.
All right, let's move on to our second to last piece of reader mail. This is from Mike Bates, who's written to us before. Hey, Mike, this is a cool one. I like this. I did not know that Mike was currently a freshman in high school. Congratulations. Good luck in the next 4 years. That is a difficult time sometimes.
And go easy on stuff.
Yeah. He's helping to run an Android mobile technology news site. He writes an average of 3 to 5 articles a day in addition to daily video news. Site's been up a few months, and they're starting to get awareness, and that's awesome. That's cool. He says, I'm really liking tech journalism. I'm wondering what kind of things you guys studied in high school, college that you think helped you get where you are. Also, do you have any tips for getting more well-known in the community? Thanks, Mike. Cool question. I'll tell you what I studied, Mike. I studied acting. So
I think we are all spot on. The way I see the team, we are all spot on.
I mean, the thing is, I think this is one of those industries that requires it requires a lot of different types of skill sets, a lot of people with different skill sets, and I think that it also has a lot of room for people with different skill sets. Some of us on the team are really good at one thing and not good at another. Others are the exact opposite of that. So I think, Mike, it ultimately doesn't matter what you choose to study. The industry seems to have room for a lot of different types of people. Do you guys agree?
Agree.
Yeah, I think I am the same as everybody else on the team, with one maybe exception. I have nothing in common with this field I'm working in right now. I finished philology and law school, so I'm by no means a tech-oriented from school person. But I think what it takes is dedication and love for the industry, for technology, for gadgets, an open mind, and if you want advice, try to always be as unbiased as you can. This is the key to success, and the community will recognize you for that.
True.
Agreed.
True. In my case, I studied business. I worked in airlines for 15 years, and before that, I had a ton of odd jobs. So I honestly, my experience with this, it pretty much had to be that I was a contributor in just about every forum you can think of, and the way I learned, the way I landed in Pocketnow was because I actually bricked my HP iPad 1940 years ago, and there was this guy on the forum at Pocketnow that actually helped me out. And so, it doesn't really, I don't think it requires a specific, skill set. I just think that, like Tony said, you require an open mind if you want a tip. And the second one, which is the tip that I'll give you, and it's something that all of us at Pocketnow share, and it's be a perfectionist. And it's funny because a lot of people have negative things to say about perfectionism. But if it wasn't for perfectionism, you wouldn't see the Michael Jackson videos that you see, or the way the guy would dance, or music videos would be totally different, and movies would be totally different if there wasn't a perfectionist guy that came and just raised the bar of how things have to be. So if you see a certain, at Pocketnow, we've been this way. We've seen people do video in a certain way, and we're like, no, we want to do video better. We want it to be good. We want people to like it. We want it to be a pleasant experience. And we've seen editorials in other ways. And I think that perfectionism really helps you raise the bar and give readers, more for their time. Obviously, it's going to require a lot more effort. Sometimes I end up converting a video 4 times just because I get a green flash at the end or something. It's stupid, I know, but that's that level of respect towards your readers and your viewers is what really garners you popularity. The fact that you care about them.
No, that is solid. I think you said it better than I could. So, Mike, I hope that is helpful. Thank you for following us, and let me know. Shoot us an email with your site. I didn't omit your site name for proprietary reasons. I just didn't receive it. So shoot us an email with your site. We'll check it out. And good luck to you. And finally, we've got an email from John Abrams. Hey guys, love the podcast. John, his contract ended on his BlackBerry 9630. Finally ended a few months ago. He says he's finally able to get his first super phone. He says it's pretty clear you got to choose an OS, you got to choose an ecosystem. With that in mind, which OS, he asks, iOS, Android, Windows Phone, or other, do you think has the brightest future in terms of continuing to grow, innovate, and have the best end-user experience? In other words, if you had to choose one operating system you use for presumably the rest of your life, which walled garden would you choose? That's from John Abrams of the Planet Earth. I've got my answer. Do you guys?
Yeah, I got mine too.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Fire away, guys.
Tony, go for it.
Okay, so my answer, the way I see it, I have 3 questions here, and I will give you 3 answers. Wow. The brightest future of continuing to grow is one answer. Innovate is a second answer, and have the best user experience is a third answer, because you won't get all of these in one platform. So as far as I see things right now, innovation. No, let's start with terms of continuing to grow. I think Android has the power to continue to grow. So that's Android. Innovation, I'd say go with Windows Phone. And if you look for the end user experience, go with iOS. I know it wasn't helpful, but your question was phrased in such a way that these are my thoughts.
That's a good roundup, and I can't disagree with your conclusions. Yeah. What about you, Jaime?
Agreed. In my case, you come from a BlackBerry, John, and so do I. I used BlackBerries for work for like 5 or 6 years back when they were bricks. Yeah. And for me, moving from Windows Mobile to a BlackBerry was a big change in paradigm. But I actually liked it because it was really smart. Messaging and everything is blocked in one place. You have to be looking around within apps and everything. But for me, switching from that to iOS really helped because the learning curve was small. And, that's what I tell people. Listen, for your first smartphone, I do recommend you probably consider an iPhone just because it requires a very small learning curve and everything is compartmentalized. How do you say that in English?
Compartmentalized, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it makes the learning curve easy. I've learned of a lot of people that have adopted Android initially, but they don't really have an open mind, probably because of their age or whatever, and they just block themselves and return the phone. And they're not doing justice to Android because it's a really great platform. The only problem is it's catered for power users. So my advice to you, probably try an iPhone first. And if you feel comfortable with it, just move on to a Galaxy phone eventually or something like that.
So, I think that kind of taking all these points that you raised, John, into balance and trying to find a happy medium ground. I think in terms of continuing to grow, Android is definitely the one to to look at there. I mean, it's just a juggernaut, and it shows no sign of slowing anytime soon. As far as innovation goes, Google is no slouch when it comes to innovation either. You just need to look at the various unlock options in stock Android to see that, and that's just a minor point. And then you've got the OEMs contributing to that too. If you want to go with a Samsung device that does crazy stuff like Smart Stay and whatever, and yada yada yada, and have the best end user experience. Well, yeah, I think iOS delivers that right now. I think I think Jelly Bean is really interesting in its stock configuration. It's starting to get so clean. And I cannot, I'm going to sound like the fanboy I am, the retired WebOS fanboy I am. I think with Matias Duarte continuing to exert his influence at Google, Android is going to get even more acceptable from a user interface standpoint, and it might even grow excellent. Yeah, so I think Android is probably the best bet to make there, which is not that is a little bit of a judgment against iOS. I'm annoyed that it hasn't changed in 5 years, and I'm worried it won't change for another 5. And that Apple, as Jaime said earlier in the podcast, Apple is doing the BlackBerry thing. Now, he was saying that in a different context, but I think that Apple is doing the BlackBerry thing from a UI perspective, and that's very annoying. Windows Phone, I can't say one way or the other because I haven't used 8 yet. So Android would be my vote for you. That would be the walled garden that I would choose.
Yeah, the commenters are probably going crazy right now. What do you mean Windows? What do you mean Windows Phone? And get the Lumia 920.
You get the Lumia 920. What are you talking about? Yeah, and by the way, I'm still planning on buying a 920 just in case that was.
Man, just get Jessica Alba instead.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's the choice.
There we go. Okay.
All right. Well, I think we have gone well over time. This is easily the longest podcast in our history, but we had a lot of news to cover. We couldn't skip listener mail again. I really wanted to show you guys some love there. So thank you, guys, everyone for writing in. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us this long. Tony, Jaime, do you have a final thought before we wrap up?
No, thank you, everybody, for the love. And it's good to be in a Q3, which is not yet over. Looking forward to the Monday event. And then I'm looking forward to draw a conclusion to this year in our usual year wrap-up editorials.
By the way, I love it. Tony's like, I'm like, do you have any final thoughts, Tony? And Tony's like, no, here are my final thoughts.
I mean, no, comma, nothing specific, comma, but should I say this?
I love it. No, I love it. I'm just giving you crap. Jaime.
No, in my case, I'm just, this is probably the most competitive year that I've ever seen in the platform. Smartphone platform as it is, and even tablets. I feel this is a great year. I mean, I see companies going crazy. They want to launch the product before the other, and they've got so many products. And I feel this is just the boom that we were dreaming about years ago when we started with our pocket PCs and stuff. And I think that I would love to know, because I know what I want this holiday season, but I would love to know in the comments, readers, please share, what are you guys getting this holiday season? What are you thinking about? Because there are so many things to choose from. And beside the Lumia 920 that you're going to say, what other product are you out there thinking that you'll probably get? Please share it down below. We'd love to read what you have to say. Does it have to
be a product, or can it be a person?
Well, that's for the Pocketnow After Dark. All right, guys. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Feel free to throw a tweet our way. We are active on the Twitter sphere. I'm trying to get Tony even more active, and it's working. Tony, you've been a really good tweeter recently.
Like I have a choice. I mean, actually, Brandon had to convince me to have a Twitter account, and he told me, let me quote, even Opera has one, and when I heard that, I said, okay, I have to have one too.
And if you want to follow Tony, he is at Anton D Nagy, ANTONDNAGY. Jaime also tweets fairly often at Jaime Rivera, JAIME RIVERA. No, there's an underscore in there. I knew it. I knew I would get something wrong. JAIME underscore RIVERA. Sorry, man. And my handle is not my name. You can find me at Captain2Phones. Follow Pocketnow's official Twitter account at PocketNowTweets. You can also follow us on Google and Google Plus and Facebook if you just search for us there. Leave us a review on iTunes. Please keep doing that, or Zune if you like the podcast. If you've already done so, thank you again. And finally, if you have a topic, question, suggestion for the podcast, just want to say hello. Even though we can't get back to everybody anymore, we can't get back to everyone anymore. We love hearing from you at podcast@pocketnow.com. Thank you again for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.